Things kicked off here. We've got a lot of information to cover today. I want to thank everybody for taking time out to come join us. Today, we're going to be walking through building confidence in AI security. We're going to talk about specific areas where organizations need to be looking at their security stance when implementing AI or using AI in the organization. We'll also be talking about the HITRUST AI risk management and certification program. Joining us today, Stephanie Maddock, who is the Accorian director and principal, for the HITRUST arena here at Accorian. She'll be leading the webinar today, and Jeremy Hoovel is going to be joining us from HITRUST. He's the Chief Innovation Officer, and he's responsible for a lot of this stuff here that we're talking about with the AI stuff. So with all of that, I'm going to pass it off to Stephanie. One housekeeping note: if you have any questions, please post it in the question and answer module. I will be monitoring. If it's something going along with the topic at the time or urgent, I'll jump in and have Stephanie or Jeremy see if they can address that question. If not, we will allow some time at the end of the presentation to go through all the questions. All right, Stephanie, off to you.
Great to be here. Thanks, Jeremy, for joining us. Thanks for that intro, Sean. We want to invite participants to scan this QR code. We understand that there's probably a number of people out there who want to know more about the specifics of the AI security assessment, the HITRUST AI Security Assessment. So this QR code will get you into that. Go ahead and scan that. Feel free to review it as we move through the presentation and raise questions as questions come up. All right, so I imagine that there's some folks out there who have an awareness of the AI security assessment. You've maybe sat through other presentations, and you might know a little bit about the HITRUST AI risk assessment, and want a better understanding of the differences and which one might be right for your organization. We're going to focus today on the HITRUST AI security assessment and certification, what it is, who it's for, and that sort of thing. Jeremy, can you walk us through an overview of the certification and some of the distinguishing factors in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks for having me. Excited to be able to share the details of kind of this exciting new product that HITRUST has brought to market, and a really what I think is a strong need. And the need behind this certification goes as follows. Organizations are incorporating right now generative AI, but for a while now, different forms of AI into their production systems at a greater clip. The Gen AI explosion has accelerated this adoption of AI into production systems, and there is more and more sensitive and confidential data being either used to train models or actually being fed into AI-enabled systems. And this sort of AI acceleration from experimentation to operationalization really drove several conversations that sounded a bit like this for me personally over the past approximately 2 years. It was, hey, HITRUST, we've been using the HITRUST CSF as our framework of choice to be able to understand which security requirements and privacy protection requirements we need to implement to help sort of address what we need to address in our threat landscape. And from our compliance perspective, we use the CSF. We like the CSF from HITRUST, and we use HITRUST certifications to demonstrate that we've implemented an appropriate level of control mitigations around security and privacy to our stakeholders. So we're using the machine. However, we're about to start prototyping AI, and I'm looking at the CSF, and I really don't see any specific requirements around AI. What's the thinking here? Is the HITRUST machine supportive of AI, and will it help us understand and mitigate AI specific risks? And fast forward from those conversations to today, over the past 18 months, HITRUST has been on a journey to really address that need. So for organizations who are deploying AI technologies into their technology stack and need to demonstrate that they're doing so in a manner that respects and acknowledges they have a role to play in security as a deployer of AI within their technology, and that they are doing everything they need to do to address to a reasonable degree and to demonstrate to that degree that it's in place. And so here we are. We've got a certification that's focusing exclusively on AI security. Stephanie, you mentioned that we've got an AI risk management offering as well. Came out a little bit before this, but for the AI security piece, the certification overview is a bit as follows. It's new. I mentioned it's for organizations who deploy AI in their software. And it's an optional accompaniment to other types of HITRUST CSF validated assessments or even readiness, E1, I1, R2. It focuses on the security of the overall AI system. And I'll spend a moment to talk about that bullet point. We found very early on that it was not specific enough to just say AI security. It's just not, because that could mean different things to different people. To the threat actors, it could mean using AI to help be better at breaching systems. That's certainly not what this is. To organizations that have really robust SOC teams, it could be that using AI to help be better at defending the overall organization, like parsing logs. It's not that per se. Instead, it's security of the AI system. Yeah, thanks for advancing to this. So what are the controls necessary that you have to implement whenever an AI model and AI capabilities are being incorporated into a system? So that's really the focus, and it's got a collection of really prescriptive requirements that an organization can set out to implement. And if you implement them to a sufficient degree and leverage an external assessor organization like Accorian to demonstrate and validate that implementation, HITRUST will award a certification for 1 or 2 years, depending on the assessment type. So hopefully that gives a really high-level overview of kind of what we're talking about, what we built here today. Looks like you're on mute, Stephanie.
Yeah, Stephanie, you're on mute. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I just want to pull out that, and Jeremy sort of walked through this as well, that the certification is intended for AI provider organizations. I want to distinguish those from users of AI as well. So that's the intent of that one.
Yeah, and I guess the important point there is this is for an organization who's actually deploying an AI capability into an application, as well as maybe an organization who is making an AI model available to others to build upon, like an AI platform as a service context. And both of those definitions roll up under sort of the ISO 22989 definition of an AI provider. So we're kind of following that. If you're an AI provider, you qualify and you've got sort of the need for a certification like this.
And I think another point is that it's not, it doesn't exclude any of these types of AI. It's inclusive of generative AI, predictive AI, rule-based AI, and really allows for, sort of tailoring the assessment to address the type of AI model and other factors around the AI product.
Absolutely. And this was an exciting bit of conversation we had with our working groups that we stood up to sort of help understand the need and shape our thinking. We had a long period of very frequent meetings with a working group of internal and external stakeholders, external assessor firms and cloud providers like Microsoft and AWS, and big healthcare payers and medical companies, et cetera. Managed service providers. And one of the first things we said was, is the need just for generative AI, or is the need for actually reliable assurances over different types of AI and the specificities related to security therein? And we learned that, look, Gen AI is new and it's being operationalized, but there's a lot of predictive AI models out there that have nuances that are not being addressed through kind of existing control frameworks that should be. And even further back in the past, and depending on the nature of the business, rule-based AI is common in some industries, and you really can't ignore it if you want a holistic offering. And then on the right side of the slide, we acknowledge that the AI technology landscape changes very commonly. And for those looking at a recording of this webinar, maybe 2 years from now, I might be like, look how old they're talking about RAG, right? Maybe because it's moving that fast, but we're making every effort to address the popular development patterns for incorporating AI into applications. And currently, for Gen AI, people are using vector embeddings, people are using AI platform as a service. Agentic AI is about to have a moment, it's starting to have a moment, and RAG, obviously. And so there are specificities in the expectations of the certification, like the requirements that we'll talk about. If you're using agent-based AI, do this thing too. If you're using AI platform as a service, this is what you have to consider. So very happy to say we're trying to keep this current, and HITRUST's frequency of updating the offerings and framework will enable us to keep this current going forward as well.
So, with a focus on AI providers and AI product development, I imagine the threat landscape to be somewhat more targeted than organizations, that are simply users of AI. And in the last couple of days, we have the case of DeepSeek AI, sort of celebrated and reviled by the industry at the same time for its quick product development and low cost, right? But within the last day, it seems like no coincidence that there was also an attack on DeepSeek that brought down certain features of that platform. And it seems that while we can't know for sure that perhaps the development timeline and low budget might have had an impact, might have evolved that quickly because there wasn't a focus on AI security. That might have been lacking in that process. So Jeremy, you worked with industry leaders to analyze the threats and harmonize multiple resources. Can you tell us more about threats identified through that process and how AI security controls are identified and how they might actually prevent scenarios like we're seeing with DeepSeek?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an acknowledgement very early on that AI technologies, it's a capability built into an existing software stack. And so when you have an AI system, you've got all the kind of traditional cybersecurity threats that exist on any type of IT system. But there are additional cybersecurity threats that are specific to AI systems. And using AI exacerbates some of those longstanding security threats. So we work to understand the specificities of AI security threats, as well as whatever is especially exacerbated. And we did that through a number of avenues. One is to look at authoritative sources like we've got here. There were several authoritative sources that were tapped in HITRUST research and preparation of this offering. Several are listed here. But the goal, right, was to understand the threat landscape, because the threat landscape drives this is the why behind these controls that we're expecting organizations to put in place. Any kind of controls rationalization without the why is flawed. And so we started with, let's inventory the cybersecurity threat landscape. Good news is there's a ton of work done by some really smart companies before we got to it. And where we landed was obviously not an exhaustive list of every possible security threat for IT systems. And again, not an exhaustive list of every AI specific security threat. However, what we've got here listed were the most prominent and relevant and most important to include mitigations for or detections for in the cybersecurity offering for AI. And we grouped them into these ways. And again, some of this is old, like denial of service is not a new AI thing. Denial of the AI service itself, denial of that AI component, maybe the API that you're calling. There's a specificity there that can't be ignored. Also, poisoning attacks, new spin on something old, but data poisoning and model poisoning are very real threats. Supply chain attacks, similar deal here. The risk of software of unknown provenance has existed for a long time, but now you've got different types of software that potentially have their own problems that you might be bringing in through your supply chain, like some model you download off a Hugging Face. You're not really sure who built or whether it's backdoored, or some data set that you get through some public avenue that could have been poisoned by a bad actor. There's also some threats unique to large language models that certainly can't be ignored, like confabulation, which you might, people talk about hallucination. It's the same vein. Sensitive disclosure in the output of a Gen AI system, or even excessive agency of the machine, doing maybe more than the designers intended. And input-based attacks are always relevant when you're talking about cybersecurity threats. But here, there's some very specific ones to AI systems, like model inversion and model extraction and evasion that you don't really hear talked about as much. And obviously, prompt injection maybe gets a lot of the press love because it's maybe the simplest to understand. So every one of these AI security threats in that specification that we had the QR code and I've linked to in the chat here. Every one of these has a page describing it, also has crosswalks back to where it's explained in much more detail in authoritative sources like the NIST adversarial attack taxonomy for AI systems. And we've got all these crosswalks as well as links from these threats to the mitigations and detections and variance reduction controls that are included in the certification itself.
Thanks so much. Sean, just doing a check. Are there any questions that we should address?
No, nothing yet. We had one around, is the AI certification for HITRUST part of the R2, or how's it laid out? And I answered that by just saying it's an add-on to that. It's a separate certification that you can tack onto all three of the different types of assessments, and will not impact your R2 if you're worried about that as well. It would be, it's on top of it, scored separately.
Yep, we're going to talk about that in the presentation as well. So we'll come back to that.
I did want to say one thing while you're here on the threat side of it, though, that Jeremy was talking about. From our side of it, we are seeing a significant increase in attacks, especially things that, when we start digging into them, we're seeing, denial of services, we're seeing, more phishing stuff that clearly is being AI generated, where the model is learning based off of what's happening. So, just so people understand that, this isn't something that you need to prepare for that might be coming. It's here, it's happening.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about certification options and benefits. The field of AI assurance and AI security frameworks, or AI frameworks, is certainly growing. We have a number of them listed here, and it's becoming a crowded field. So finding the right one for your organization requires an understanding of how the organization engages with AI, who your stakeholders are, what the level of assurance that you need is. At this point, ISO 42001 and HITRUST AI certification are really the only two that are certifiable. Other frameworks tend to be more focused broadly on risk management and a variety of use cases. So Jeremy, how does the HITRUST AI security certification set itself apart from ISO 42001 and others in this expanding field of security risk management and assurance?
Yeah, great question. A lot of these options try to address different aspects of a larger problem, and the larger family of the problem generally starting to become referred to as trustworthy and responsible AI. And some of what you listed, like ISO 42001, really says, look, we're going to help an organization understand their kind of corner of tackling trustworthy and responsible AI as a very large umbrella, which includes stuff like privacy and transparency and AI ethics and respect for human safety and respect for the environment and security and this and that. And it's a very long list depending on where you look. The AI cybersecurity assessment and certification does not try to address all aspects of responsible and trustworthy AI. However, we want to help organizations really demonstrate that they've nailed AI security as a important foundational component of that larger problem space. So instead of trying to go really broad, and sort of inch deep, mile wide. We're going to say, look, AI security, it's difficult to do anything else until you get this pinned down. We're going to help you really understand what it takes to pin down AI security for your context, your deployment of AI. And another differentiator is it's certifiable. HITRUST has a long-standing, very mature approach to certifying control implementations against AI systems. And we're bringing that to bear on the AI assurance problem space. Um, Several of what you mentioned were very important documents, very, very rich sources of guidance, but they don't have an assurance mechanism attached. So you can't say, here's my proof that some external assessor firm who pulled samples and did validation and I passed. There's no proof of that. Through this HITRUST AI certification, you're able to prove that you've got not only your word for it, but an external assessor who did really robust testing, and HITRUST did a quality review. There's independent validation of this implementation.
All right, thanks. So, so then let's talk about a little bit what Sean hit on, which is how do you become HITRUST AI Security certified? Kind of dove into, Sean was kind of talking about the fact that it's an add-on to the E1, I1, or R2 certification. What are some other things, considerations in initiating this assessment?
Yeah, well, and just talk about this one for a second. I mentioned we had sort of this working group based approach where we sought out feedback from industry stakeholders and others to really understand how best to tackle this AI security assurance problem. And one of the things we learned very early on was that, look, AI is a component of an IT system. AI is not the capability. It's like the engine that can make the car go faster. It's a better type of engine, but you're not going to certify the engine. You got to certify the entire car because it is part of a larger IT system. And because AI is additive to an IT system, we felt it necessary to make basically the AI content, the AI 44 required controls, additive to a assessment of a foundational IT security stance. So what that means in our world is those undergoing a HITRUST E1, I1, or R2 assessment that have an AI component leveraged by an in-scope platform can choose to include an AI security as an add-on assessment. So it's sort of in the same assessment object, same assessment as it were, but there's extra controls to address these AI security specificities. AI security can't be assessed alone in our view. Other aspects, really, for those familiar with the HITRUST machinery, we version our CSF. We release many versions a year, and organizations who are on version 11.4 of the CSF and later have the option to enjoy this. Yeah.
I would imagine that a lot of organizations would want to know whether it's very early in the cycle for the AI security assessments. The controls have just been released. A lot of organizations haven't had a chance to prepare in undertaking. If they were to undertake the AI security assessment at this point, would in the case that they weren't able to achieve the criteria for certification for the AI security assessment, would that impact their sort of core HITRUST R2 E1 I1 assessment?
Oh yeah, great question. So for the E1 and I1, you do have the ability to add the AI security content as well and do a single assessment of the core E1 or I1 requirements and the 44 additional AI security requirements. And those would have independent outcomes, meaning if you didn't do so hot on the AI security requirements, but you did great on your E1 requirements, you'd get an E1 certification and you'd get a validated only, like non-certified AI report. That's true for E1, I1, and that's the goal for all of the assessments in our portfolio to have independent outcomes. Currently on the R2, we're working to achieve that. Later in 2025, this year, we'll have that separation of independent outcome capability. Currently, however, when you add the AI security controls to your R2 assessment, and you didn't do so hot on your AI security controls, it could potentially impact how your R2 assessment overall fares. So just one thing to keep in mind there.
Mhm.
Great question.
Great, thanks. All right, so you guys have also kind of talked about the fast track to certification for those who are already HITRUST CSF certified. Can you walk us through this approach?
Yeah, and so the scenario here is, let's say I've already got some kind of high trust certification. Maybe I just finished an R2 6 months ago. Do I have to completely redo my R2 assessment with these AI security requirements added in, or should I wait another 18 months to try to get this AI certification? Because it sounds like something I want, need, my customers will demand. Do I have to wait that long? And the answer is no, you don't. Through either internal inheritance or relying on your issued HITRUST CSF report, you can avoid retesting of all that testing that is fresh in your existing HITRUST certification. The example here uses an E1. It could be an R2, it could be an I1. It doesn't matter. The idea is you make a new assessment in the MyCSF assessment platform, scoped just like your current, except you add the AI security content, and then you either internally inherit all the existing testing that's still fresh into that new assessment object, or just rely on the actual PDF that you got, your final PDF. And then that's how you cover basically your existing content that hasn't changed. And your newly added requirements focusing on AI security, that would be the focus of the assessment. Your external assessor and you would work together to really get accurate control maturity scores and evidence for just those 44. Submit that to HITRUST. HITRUST would QA, and then you'd get basically an updated report for your E1 or I1 or R2, and that AI security certification as well. And you did that without duplicating testing that you might have just done in preparation for your existing HITRUST report, right? That's the idea. And this is all allowed through the existing HITRUST assurance program requirements. There's no special allowances. This is the works today without us having to really bend or flex at all, given the freshness of evidence.
All right, thank you. Well, I want to go back and highlight that QR code to give people a little bit more opportunity to click on that code if that's something that they're interested in. So I'm going to scroll back in the presentation
And
for
if
the
we
QR
can,
code. Sorry.
if we could paste the actual link to the in the chat, maybe I'll try to do that if I can, so we can all get it. I don't know if I have the ability, but yeah, the QR code works. And if you can't get it to work, we'll try to get the link pasted, but it says to hosts and panelists. I don't know if I did it right.
I'll take care of it, Jeremy. I got it.
Cool, thanks.
All right.
Yeah, and
All right.
what this is I mentioned it a few times. This was when we first released it, our request for comment documentation, where we really set out to be very transparent about what we were building towards, because we wanted all stakeholders to have a voice and sort of the machine and the machinery. So are there security threats that we had omitted consideration of, or the requirements that were poorly worded? And we did a several month request for comment period, and I'm very happy to say we got feedback from all over the globe incorporated. And what you see here is an updated current AI security certification spec. It's got the 44 requirements, guidance on shared responsibility inheritance, about the problem space, why HITRUST for AI, the threat landscape, updates to the glossary. It's very rich. So I hope everyone on this call bookmarks this, keeps it in your hip pocket as your organization explores prototyping AI or taking Gen AI systems, for example, from prototype to operationalization.
Thank you. All right, Sean, are there any questions coming in that we need to address?
Nothing major coming in right now. Nobody is asking. I think you guys have covered a lot of the details here with it. I know a lot of the questions that I get when I'm talking to new clients and people that are exploring what should I do from here. It's what's the big deal? Why do I have to look at this? And a lot of it really comes back to that threat landscape that you guys covered there. But it's making sure that they fully understand if they're implementing AI from a development standpoint or from a productional standpoint, that they're going in and looking at where their model is being developed from and how it's being fed. That's probably one of the biggest things that we've seen here. Some of the early days of AI being released, with ChatGPT, and we saw all these different versions of it out there. We saw where people were using it to create code, cut and paste it in, and then what they didn't figure out was, well, that code probably has a lot of backdoors already in it, or some vulnerability, some vulnerable areas that they weren't looking. And so we saw issues with that early on. Now what we're seeing is more along the lines of organizations trying to build AI into their applications, and they're still trying to use public models, or they're using shared models that they don't have control over. So a lot of times, there are vulnerable areas within that, but we're seeing inconsistencies in data and stuff like that, again, which is not necessarily a security risk, but it is a risk for the organization as a whole. So again, a lot of what you're going to see, through the review process and into the certification is management of that model itself. And then when you look at the other side of it, which I think is the big thing for organizations, working on, how do you allow people in your organization to use AI, and what do you allow them to do? So a lot of times, we're looking at things like, like Copilot, and we have the ChatGPT add-ins for like Excel and stuff like that. We do that ourselves here, but it's, you got to make sure that, again, you're managing, what your source, from that is, how you're using it. We are working with organizations to develop, end user policies, to help manage that and make sure that the organization has some control over what's happening and what's going on and who's doing it within the organization. So we want to make sure everybody understands the two different sides of the house. The use of it from an end user perspective or from an organizational perspective, and then the actual building it and actually doing production level work with it. We'll work with organizations to figure out those paths within that, and how to go forward with that, become compliant with it. From healthcare organizations, obviously, HITRUST is the gold standard that we want to follow. We applaud them on diligently getting this out as fast as they did. Stephanie and I both were privileged enough to be part of the team that helped develop some of these controls and these standards that you're seeing here. So it's become very near and dear to our hearts that everybody look at this and read it, and give us feedback and let us know how great it is. But we also want to make sure that it's value added to organizations. I think, is there anything else we want to cover there, Jeremy?
No, else to say, there was a question about ISO 42001. In that specification, we've got a page that sort of describes, hey, ISO 42001 is a very important AI management system standard. This is a very important AI security assessment and certification, and it's not an either or. Basically, ISO 42001 is meant to address a very broad stroke of trustworthy responsible AI content, but it doesn't go deep into any particular area. Where this helps you nail that AI security piece, they're designed to basically work together. It's not an either or, and you really need both. And a company might say, look, we've already decided on ISO 42001, and we're already going down that path. Maybe we'll wait on the AI security piece until after this is done and we got our thing in production, and then we'll look. And I'd say, admirable, I get it, but it's a bad idea, because it's so hard to build security in after the fact of a production system. And some of these security considerations happen far upstream of your organization who's just using a model. Some of this stuff has to do with understanding like controls performed by your AI platform. This AI platform as a service provider, and what assurances you get from them over certain things that you expect them to be doing, and are they doing, and can I inherit from that? So it's difficult to have those conversations when the plane's already in the air. It's easier to figure it out when you're building the plane on the ground, as it were. But we do have a crosswalk between ISO 42001 and the AI security content for those that are tackling both, because there are aspects of 42001 policy and procedure and some SDLC stuff that is addressed maybe topically in 42001, but also that plus more in this one. So there's a crosswalk out there as well.
Hey, we did get one question that came in and asked, is it possible to see the controls without doing an assessment, without doing a HITRUST assessment?
Yeah, they are in that specification in the same language that you'll see in my CSF. Yeah.
And again, a lot like Jeremy says, as early as possible in your process, engage somebody like us, engage an assessor firm, call HITRUST directly. If you guys know you're going down this path, and especially if you've got PII, PHI, data. But even really, I mean, at this point, forget the healthcare, flag over this. If you have data, protected data of any nature whatsoever, you need to get involved with an organization to look at the security stance as early as possible. Again, to help build this in from the beginning, simple as just, building in code reviews to start with, but then how are we building, the framework around that as you move that application through the different layers and then get it out to production, and then be able to manage it from the outside. So again, engage us or HITRUST or another assessor firm or security firm or anybody. There's a ton of people out there that claim they know what they're doing here. We encourage everybody to do that. All right. I guess anything else we want to cover? Are we good? I'll give the closeout here. From Accorian side of the house, we're a full service cybersecurity organization. We specialize from the compliance side of the house. We work with just about every compliance standard you can imagine out there. If there's an acronym we haven't heard, we'll figure it out very quickly, but I think we've heard almost all of them at this point. We are a global organization, so we do support clients around the world with all of these different compliance standards. Everything from readiness to getting your certification or attestations complete. We do have a testing side of the house, so we'll work with organizations on identifying vulnerabilities and doing their pen testing and scanning and all that kind of stuff. One of our things that we love to do, we try to get as many organizations involved in this, is to do red teaming exercises. Let us play the bad guy, and we'll play a very interesting game of capture the flag. Let me figure out where the holes are, and we'll go fix them before the bad guys figure them out. And then we'll build from there. We work with organizations to make sure that they're getting enterprise level top tier service at affordable prices. So we're there to help as much as we possibly can. We like challenges. So try to challenge us as much as you can. And then some of the other things that we do here, we do staffing, and we'll do vCISO, which is another one of my sides of the house as well, besides the HITRUST side. So if you need supplemental support and work within your organization, can't afford to go out there and hire these high-priced guys to come in and fix everything, give us a call and we'll figure out a plan to do that for you. All right, so Jeremy and Stephanie, I want to thank you guys. I think this was great information. I know Jeremy's on the AI tour here of late, talking about this stuff every chance he gets. I think it's a competition. I think we'll have to see who talks more AI, me or him, in conferences, things like that. But it's like everywhere I go, I know it comes up as all right, well, what are you guys doing? How do you do it? How does HITRUST fit into this? So we want to make sure that we're passing that information out there. And again, as I said earlier, trying to make things as easy as we possibly can for organizations. This stuff is hard. It's tough. There's a lot riding on it. So you have to have partners like us in HITRUST in order to meet these standards and protect yourselves. So again, we'll send out the presentation here, the slide deck, so everybody will have that. Contact information is here for us. Jeremy's information will be in the slide deck as well. So if you guys have any specific questions that you need addressed, please reach out to any of us. We're more than happy to talk to you guys or get on the phone and talk about your situation. All right, guys, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.